What's up, my family? Listen, first-time listener, or you've been here the whole damn time. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, giddy up, let's go, enjoy the clip, no notes.
They were gutless. They played like a bunch of cowards. Preferably Ben Simmons played like a bunch of cowards. The bench was non-existent. Doc Rivers was awful. It's a dark day for Philadelphia sports. This is a huge, huge black eye for this franchise. To lose on purpose for all those years and still not even be able to get past where the Andre Iguodala flawed teams got is really, really, really embarrassing, because you had a guy that perpetrated this process that everyone just falls in love with because I don't even know why. This nerd, this loser, Scam Hinkie, his name's Sam Hinkie, but he'll always be Scam Hinkie in my book, told me that the only way to win championships in this league was to lose a bunch of games, basically on purpose, and get a lot of draft picks and accumulate talent that way. It hasn't worked. You have Joel Embiid, who's all world. He's a tremendous talent. Now, it's extremely frustrating that he pulled a little bit of a Houdini disappearing act in the second half of games 4 and 5. And it's disappointing that he's got an injury history longer than pretty much anyone in the league. But he did his job. It's not about Joe tonight. It's about this process that is just flawed. And it's not the way you build champions. It's not the way you build a championship basketball team. Now, for me, the process started on draft night. You trade Drew Holiday for Nerlens Noel. That didn't work. You have the Markelle Fultz embarrassment. You get Sam Hinkie out of there, and then you get Colangelo in, and he can't get it done. Ben Simmons, who's a total stiff, he's the crux of the problems here in Philadelphia, if you ask me. He's part of our poll question, which we'll get to in a minute, but it's really just a black eye for the city of Philadelphia, Brad. Last night, this series should not have happened.
It shouldn't have gone. It shouldn't have gone 7 games. I mean, the Sixers have more talent than the Hawks. They really should have won. But the problem is, other than Embiid, nobody else stepped up and made shots. And when your point guard is afraid to shoot, that just makes the problem even worse. And he is right now. Ben Simmons is the problem with the team. I mean, he is the reason you lost. I mean, the perfect example was when he has a slam dunk and he's worried about, I might get fouled, and doesn't just dunk the ball with authority, and then he goes and passes it off to Tybalt, and he ends up getting fouled, and he makes 1 out of 2 anyway. I mean, you can't be that afraid to go to the foul line. I mean, he ran it when the lights shine brightest. He ran away. I mean, listen, if you guys lost the way Brooklyn lost, where they left it all on the floor, and unfortunately just a little bad luck for Durant that his toe just barely touched the 3-point line and they would have won, you can accept losing like that if you're Brooklyn, okay? But as far as the Sixers are concerned, and the Bucks are an excellent team. The Sixers should have beaten Atlanta. I'm really surprised that happened. Really am. I mean, that just shouldn't have happened. I mean, they seem to play well in spurts. They just didn't put 9 innings together, and that shouldn't happen.
The Philadelphia 76ers should trade Ben Simmons. I'm interested to see where you stand on this.
Well, to me, there's two lines of thought here. Okay, the pro is if you trade him, you'll get him off the team. But the problem is, the con is that he's still owed $137 million, which means it's a big contract that they have to move. And I don't know how many teams in the league really can afford to bring somebody like him in. If you do trade him, you're going to get somebody else's problem. I had suggested on Facebook earlier this morning, maybe they could trade him for a guy like, say, John Wall, and you hope John Wall stays healthy, and he can hit a big shot when he needs to because he's a very good shooter. He's the kind of player you could get, but I just don't know that you're going to get full value for a guy like him. And he's still young at 25. Now, there's also the thought if you keep him, you could put him at power forward and try to bring in a decent point guard to help lead the team. I mean, those are the two. If you keep him, you can't let him run the team and be the point guard. You got to move him to a different position.
Yeah, but the problem with the power forward, Brad, the power forward theory, Brad, is that he doesn't engage off the ball. I mean, in these playoffs, he barely engaged when he was the focal point of the offense, being the primary ball handler, but he's not interested in playing off the ball. And the sad part is, I think he thinks he played good.
Oh,
I think his head is so big and his head is so far up his ass. I think Ben Simmons thinks he played okay. He played good enough for the Sixers to win in this series.
He can't think that when he scored 4 points in Game 7, and didn't shoot the fourth quarter the last 3 or 4 games.
Look, Ben Simmons is a different cat, Brad. We talk about some of these guys that march their own drummers. Sometimes it works, like Terrell Owens. He marched to the beat of his own drum. He was very successful.
Yeah, but Terrell Owens was never afraid to get the ball and try to make the most of it. That he wasn't afraid of that. Ben Simmons just seems like once the spotlight's on him, he's afraid to shoot. He just gets rid of the ball too fast. I mean, you can't play like that. You got to go out there. You got to go out there and play. I mean, you just can't do that. See, the problem is, I don't know if you can trade him. He's making 30. He's got another $37 million a year, right? Something like that. It's got to be something like that. I think he's owed $147 million for the next 4 years.
Yeah, he signed it's not a super max deal, but the max amount of money he was available to get. The Sixers.
But who's going to take him at that price?
I don't know, but he can't be on this bad. I agree to the poll. The Sixers should trade Ben Simmons. He cannot be on this basketball team.
I agree too.
He cannot be on this basketball team next year. I don't care if you have to take a step back and be maybe like a 6 or 7 seed because you get such a diminished return. Because Joe's going to get his knee cut. He's probably, who knows if he's going to be ready for the start of the season next year. I don't know. I don't know how bad his meniscus is torn. I don't know what the recovery process is I would imagine he needs to get. Maybe he doesn't need surgery. What do I know? I'm not a doctor. I thought he would never play a game the rest of the year, but he certainly proved me wrong. And I am very proud of Joe for playing because he's probably one of the only people who aren't the problem here in Philadelphia.
He gave his heart and soul to that team.
It's a shame we only have 2 hours to talk about what gutless frauds that this team is, that this franchise is.
Listen, whenever you are upset in a series, it's a bad look. I mean, it's a bad look. I mean, listen, if the Hawks go on to win an NBA championship, then maybe you don't feel as bad about losing. But you know what? Right now, I can't imagine that they're going to match up all that well against Milwaukee. Milwaukee has the kind of team that can really take advantage of the Hawks because they can get down low with Giannis, and then Lopez can beat you with those outside shots. It's a tough. That's a real tough matchup for the Hawks. I don't know if they can beat Milwaukee.
I would be utterly shocked if the Milwaukee Bucks don't win the entire championship.
Yeah, I would too. They're a good team.
I know the Suns are kind of like the flavor of the month out west, but
Chris Paul they can score, and they can score, and
Booker.
I mean, they're a very good team. The Suns. I just don't know the Bucks. To me, I mean, they look really good. I mean, how many teams could bounce back after having a team hit a shot with 1 second to go and a really hard shot where the guy Durant was covered like a blanket and he somehow made that shot? I mean, that was an incredible shot, and he was mad because he didn't get his feet behind the 3-point line. Instead of sitting there being happy, thank God I tied it up and got it to overtime.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of competitor he is. And then you look at Simmons, and it's like, do you think Simmons would ever even think about taking a shot like that?
No, he'd be too scared.
Right. That's the problem. I mean, honestly, you would be better off, and I know this might be a little bit insulting, but you'd be better off getting the guy from the who's that guy from the Celtics that got traded to the Clippers?
Kemba Walker?
No, not Kemba Walker. Before Rondo.
Rondo?
You would have been better off with a guy like him. At least he'd shoot.
He'd probably miss, but he would shoot.
He would shoot. Oh, I mean, if you had Kemba Walker, Kemba Walker would be a perfect fit. But I mean, I don't know that. I mean, that might be a guy that the Sixers see. That's the kind of guy.
Well, that's one of the teams that I have my eye on in these, because Ben Simmons, he can't be on this team. He can't be on this team next year.
That's the kind of trade that you actually could make, because I mean, he's
like, you know, the Thunder aren't keeping Kemba Walker.
Yeah,
they're going to trade him for a younger guy.
Yeah, he's aging, and the Thunder are years away, and they have to build. And Ben won't have to worry about the whole world coming down on his head every time he refuses to shoot. You know, and maybe over the summer he can actually, you know, he can actually practice and learn to shoot. Just, you know, learn to shoot a mid-range shot, you know, a pull-up. Something like that. I mean, as far as three-point shooting, it's going to take him years to ever get.
He'll never. He's not interested.
Yeah, he's
not interested. But that's why I'm looking at the Oklahoma City Thunder, Brad. Like, I'm trading Ben for Kemba Walker.
You might be able to. Because
Kemba Walker, he's not staying in Oklahoma City. They have 1 million first-round picks. They have a good two-guard and Shai Alexander out of Kentucky, who really stepped up and looks like he's going to be quite a player in this league. And you have a backcourt of Ben Simmons and Alexander.
It's either him or John Wall. I mean, it's got to be one or the other, because financially, those are the only two guys that make sense. And also, they're the only two guys that might be able to work it out with Embiid and put him over the top. I actually think John Wall might be a better fit, because John Wall is an excellent shooter. You know, but obviously his problems are the health. But you know what? Once he got healthy in Houston, he played pretty well. I mean, I know it was an awful team, and you know, maybe you take that with a grain of salt. But John Wall can play still. You know,
I agree with you.
You put him on the Sixers. You know, he's got a nice pull up. He can definitely shoot from three. But that's the kind of guy you're going to get for Ben Simmons, because remember, it's got to be money. You can't just go ahead and trade him and expect to get younger players or anything like that. You're going to get another team's player that is basically baggage to them, and those would be the two players that I would keep my eye out on as somebody who would watch the NBA and think, where would the Sixers go?